happens on January 31st, this is the only federal race actively going on in the entire country. So all eyes around the country will be on this race, the Oregon's 1st District, which is very exciting for us. But just to go back to your point, which is a very good one, Ann, about the fact that people aren't really looking as to what party affiliation the candidate may be. They want to know who can actually get things done, who's bringing the right attitude and the right skill set to the job. And quite frankly, I'm a career builder. Not only have I employed nearly 60 people, but our small business has actually helped create more than 500 careers for people around the industry and around the country. And that's experience that we need today. We don't need another proven career politician. We need another proven career builder. And that's simply the need of this state. And as I visit, certainly people here in Clatsop County, the fact that your neighbor has a for sale sign and then it turns to a foreclosure sign, you don't care if your neighbor's a Democrat or Republican. That hurts. That's a painful thing to see. The fact that your kid can't go to college because there aren't funds there to pay for that education. The fact that your mother can't retire yet. She has to continue to work because her retirement savings have been depleted by the acts of others, especially on Wall Street. It doesn't matter what party affiliation your neighbor is or your friend is or your relative is. The fact is we're hurting together. And this partisanship that has just seeped into our political system is causing this terrible wave of a loss of hope, a loss of idealism, a loss of optimism. And I just think that if we continue to think like we've always thought in Oregon, we're going to continue to get what we've always got. It's time to change our thinking. It's time to change the kind of people we send back to Washington.
Another thing I want to touch on, one of the things we've noticed locally is there's not a huge voter turnout, and which is that kind of loss of I don't know if it's motivation overall in the community or this, who cares? Politics is so convoluted and people don't trust politicians and all those kinds of things. So why should people trust you, Rob?
Well, it's a fair question. Some of my best friends have asked me, why would you want to go be a part of that mess back in Washington, D.C.? And my answer is, quite frankly, if people like us if people don't step out of citizenship to run for office, what's the alternative? The alternative is more of the same. And quite frankly, Ann, I don't think the problem is, I'm a small business owner. I don't think the problem in Congress is that we don't have enough attorneys. I think the problem in Congress is we don't have enough people who are actually in the trenches trying to create jobs, trying to meet payrolls, trying to pay their bills on time. I'm doing that. And I'm succeeding at that, but I want to do better. I want to bring on more people. I want to give more people an opportunity for prosperity. So why they should trust me is because I wasn't groomed for this position. And Ann, nobody asked me from Washington, D.C. would I run. No one approached me 10 years ago and said, Rob, we're going to put you on the career track to run for Congress someday, but you got to do this and then that. You got to return this favor for us. You scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. That's never been a part of my world. And 2 years ago, if you would have said, Rob, you're going to run for Congress, my wife and I would have laughed at you because that wasn't our ambition. Our ambition was to grow our business and to raise a good family and to be a part of our community. But things have to happen. People need to step out of their comfort zone and do that which they didn't expect to do if we're going to really save and protect our country's future.
Okay, we're going to take a short break here now, and we'll be back in a few minutes with Rob Cornilles, the candidate for Congress in District 1. Thank you. Still have a ton of questions, but can you talk a little bit about Obama's jobs plan?
Sure. You're referring to the joint address to Congress that he made a couple of weeks ago. Well, I think first of all we need to start on those areas where there can be agreement, because we need more consensus building and more attitude in Congress and in Washington, D.C. as a whole that, we need to solve these problems together. So I'll say a couple of things about the president's plan that I like. First of all, he spoke very well about how we need to make sure we take care of our returning veterans, that they have job opportunities when they return home. And I believe strongly they need to go from helmet to hard hat quickly. And And whether it be through training programs, whether it be through relationships that we build within the corporate community that gives them reason and incentive to hire our veterans, they have sacrificed greatly. They and their families. They need to be taken care of. And by the way, I'm very grateful that many veterans have stepped forward and have formed an organization called Veterans for Cornilles. A second thing that's important to me is the president talks about infrastructure buildup. In order for us to revitalize our economy in Oregon and throughout the country, we have to be able to have reliable transportation sources. So we can't have congestion. We can't have old bridges, etc. We need to make sure that we can compete domestically as well as internationally, because we know what's happening, in the Asian countries especially. They're building up infrastructure very quickly. They can move products and services rapidly. It becomes more efficient, more cost-effective for them. We have to compete with that. What I would say, however, regarding plan, I think he's proposing, $50 billion right out of the chute. The problem with that, and your listeners will have to excuse my cynicism, is that we did try that earlier. It's called the stimulus. And even the president jokes about the fact that they weren't really shovel-ready jobs like he promised us they would be. And even today, we have 18% of the highway funds that were dedicated within the stimulus plan have been unexpended. They're still sitting there. They haven't even been used. 18% of that $800 billion package. So why is that? Well, it's because the bureaucratic nightmare to get processes approved and get permitting is preventing that kind of activity, that kind of construction. So before we go spend new money, let's spend wisely that which has already been dedicated for the purpose. And frankly, voters are so tired of seeing the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. and the people in Congress, say we're going to go ahead and take this tax money and put it towards this purpose, and then discover later it was either unused or it was used improperly. In some cases, through corruption. The fact that Solyndra, this company in California, closed down after nearly over $500 billion was spent on them, or excuse me, that's not correct. Over $500 billion was spent on propping them up. That's valuable taxpayer resource that's just basically gone down the drain. So we want to improve the infrastructure, but we need greater transparency. We need greater accountability to make sure it's happening. And as a small business owner, I know how to look at the books. I know how to make sure, once again, before we spend more money, let's make sure the money currently invested is being done wisely and that there's a return on that investment. Another thing that the president mentioned, which I think is something that should be discussed and debated in Congress, he talked about putting a further holiday on the payroll tax. Now, that's good because it puts more money in middle-class pockets. But the problem with this is that just doing a temporary tax cut extension for another 12 months is just going to create a bigger problem at the end of 2012, because at that point the payroll tax will shoot up considerably. Other tax breaks will expire. They will sunset, and now we're going to have a massive tax hike at the end of 2012 because businesses are looking at that far in advance, and their accountants are telling them, "Hey, this is what your tax obligation is going to be in 2013." They're once again saying, "Well, I'm going to sit this one out. I'm not going to take the risk of bringing on more people if I don't even know what the cost of employing them is going to be in 12 to 15 months. So what we need more than just temporary fixes and Band-Aids is we need long-term reform. We need to fix the tax code so that it's predictable. And this isn't just for a year or two. It's 5 and 10 years out. That will revitalize investment dollars in this country, both domestically and dollars even coming from overseas to invest in our local communities and our infrastructure. So these are some of the things that the president mentioned. Again, there's room for agreement here, but some of the details need to be worked out, and I want to be part of that process, Ann.
Well, and I think, too, back to, I don't want to focus on the stimulus too much, but when the stimulus happened, I've served on school boards and I currently serve on one. And what happened is this heavy, we got some money. We got stimulus so that can carry us through. Then a year later, it's not there anymore. So now what you thought was solving a problem actually created another problem. And so then 1 year is not sustainable.
That's a great point. You're building a dependency among voters, among municipalities, states, etc., and that dependency it's drying up. And so we have to fix the reason why state governments, local governments, school districts don't have the resources that they need locally.